So you can develop mobility, you can develop strength, you can develop endurance and resilience in all one package. So obviously I'm biased, and I'm not saying it's the only way to go, but that's one relative benefit, one of the many relative benefits of kettlebells. Beauty of the kettlebell, for strength specifically, is it's very easy to teach the body language of strength with the kettlebell. You would think that with a body weight it should be easier, because a lot of the skills that I teach in my book, The Naked Warrior, they are either gymnastics or martial arts based. So it's like, okay, here's the hollow position from gymnastics, or here's this little trick from hardstyle martial arts. So they're all both use body weight. Nevertheless, it takes a lot more processing to figure out how to do this right from scratch, like especially contracting your abs properly, especially if you don't have abs to start with. By the time you have them, that's good, but if you don't have them, it's hard. With a kettlebell, for example, you start doing double front squats with a pair of kettlebells. It's going to be like Zerchers. Your abdominal wall is going to light up. You suddenly learn exactly, oh, this is what it means to get tight. Or you stick your elbows inside the knees and do a goblet squat. Oh, this is what the proper squat feels like. And just very easy to integrate all your body in one lift. I mean, these days some companies will manufacture kettlebells with small jumps. What's the point? You're defeating some of the reasons for the being for this particular piece of equipment. And here's what they are. One is simplicity. You only can have a couple of bells and do a lot of things. But the other is when you suddenly, let's say that you've been pressing a 53-pound kettlebell and you're doing a lot of sets, and your goal is to press a 70-pound kettlebell, and it's a big jump. So what you're going to do is, first of all, you're going to have to put in a very significant volume of work, that foundation of the pyramid. Many strength authors throughout history, Bill Starr and many others, use that analogy of volume as being the foundation of the pyramid. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to press that 24 kilo many times properly before you're going to have a run at 70. You have to develop the confidence. The other thing is you're going to have to acquire the skill of tension, total body tension. Everything is linked up, because when you go up a couple of pounds, it doesn't make a difference. You're doing the same thing. You're not noticing. When you go up a lot, everything has to be just so. So as you're going through your sets of 5 with the 53-pounder, you're also doing just cleans with the 70-pounder. You're starting to see what it feels like. You're doing get-ups with it. You're starting to see how that weight feels like. Again, we're talking about disinhibition here. You're planning on owing this weight. So you're forced to put in a very significant volume of work, which is very healthy. It will lead to a lot of really healthy adaptations. And you will force to develop the skills to make that transition. And plus, you're also having that desirable difficulty. In learning, there is that concept by Robert Bjork about desirable difficulties for learning. If learning is very easy, if something is presented, you don't learn much. If you have to struggle, like even if you're reading something and the font is ineligible, ironically, you end up learning better. So this is an example of a desirable difficulty as you're progressing this way. So that is for strength. Obviously, kettlebell have their benefits for endurance and for other things as well, but just for adjusting the resistance. So what are the benefits, let's say, of the kettlebell swings as opposed to, or snatches? Again, snatch is more of a less democratic exercise, like the dips. Parallel bar dips, fantastic for those who can do that, but if you can't, that's too bad, but there are alternatives. So again, the snatch is great. If you cannot do snatch, you can do swing. So the swing, it allows you to train power and power endurance in an extremely safe manner. Because if you try to develop power in a lot of conventional ways, you will find you try doing Olympic lifts. It's very skill intensive, trying to learn how to do that. And besides, for some athletes, not appropriate. Racking the bar and overstretching the wrist ligaments, like for example, for fighters, that's a kiss of death. That's a really bad idea, destabilizing the wrist in this manner. And for many athletes, other athletes too. Pitcher doesn't want to do that, baseball pitcher. So then you try to do things like sprinting. Sprinter requires a lot of coaching, proper coaching, much more than a kettlebell swing. And it's very, very easy to rip a hamstring or something like that. So It's this kettlebell swing allows you to train power and power endurance in a very safe manner. And what's also very unique about it, you don't have to use a lot of weight. What's unique about the kettlebell and the kettlebell swing, another thing about the design, you can swing it back between your legs, but you don't have to let it passively swing between your legs. You can choose to accelerate it. This is called overspeed eccentric. So some years back, our colleague, one of our instructors, Brandon Hetzler, he put me and several other of our colleagues, instructors on the force plate, and we started doing swings with overspeed eccentric, which means accelerating it downwards and upwards. So we were using just a 53-pound bell. So the most experienced guys, we were able to generate over 10 Gs of acceleration. So basically we made that 50-pound bell weigh 500 pounds. But if to the listeners who know about how the passive tissues can handle the load, when the loading is really rapid, it's amazing how these tissues can handle that very, very safely. So you can apply tremendous amount of load. Of course, you don't start with that. It's not how you start your swings. So, and you can develop power endurance. So you can do a whole lot of many different sets, many sets. You've had Megan Kelly, one of our certified instructors out of UK, she set a Guinness World Record for a crazy number of swings done in an hour. And so she would just go, her training is she would go and do swings. She'll do a few reps, pick up, set it down, and she would do it for, let's say, 90 minutes. And she would do it with a heavy kettlebell. And the adaptations are fantastic from that. In the kettlebell world, we refer to the what the hell effect. So what's the what the hell effect? What the hell effect is when you're getting an adaptation that's not a beginner's gain, but it's an adaptation that's totally unexpected. There's some collateral benefit, how suddenly you're able to do something. And the improvements in fat loss, improvements in resilience. So like, for example, speaking of resilience, so some of the tactical teams that I worked with in the US here, when they added either swings or snatches to their training with the kettlebell, plus one-legged kettlebell deadlifts as well, they stopped tearing their hamstrings. So you have this amazing way to do eccentric loading for the hamstring, but it's very safe and just really prepares you. One of my friends is still playing baseball in his 60s. He says, "Thank you for the kettlebells." He went through the course in one of the federal agencies 20 years ago, and he's still doing that. He's retired, but he's still doing that. So that's a great benefit. The amount of pure workload that you can do in this amount, that's why you can burn a lot of calories, you can develop cardio, whatever. But also, like, why would anybody want to do power training who's not a power athlete? Because for so many reasons right now, I don't need to speak about it, your other guests have, for the reasons of longevity, how important it is to have high levels of power. And the kettlebell swing is one of the ways to develop it. And interestingly enough, going back, these accelerations, Professor Nikolai Yakovlev, top Soviet biochemist, he was just talking about sprints during added sprints. When you were adding sprints just to a jog, this kind of a fart-like work, he was saying how good it is for elderly and for teenagers, how good it is. So the kettlebell, even if you're not sprinting, if you don't know how to sprint, you're able to get so many of these youth-promoting benefits. And again, you have one tool that can train all the qualities. You can develop mobility. The bent press, that's a tremendous exercise. The bent press, where the mobility of the T-spine, the mobility of the shoulder. So like you watch, for example, Dr. Pope Mosley. He is one of our instructors, and he's also a doctor and biomed researcher. I mean, the gentleman is 70 years old, and he's doing these beautiful bent presses, getting himself in the range of motion that young guys, on their phones can possibly get into, and he's doing it in a healthy manner. So you can develop mobility, you can develop strength, you can develop endurance and resilience in all one package. So obviously I'm biased, and I'm not saying it's the only way to go, but that's one relative benefit, one of the many relative benefits of kettlebells. But in the overall lifelong journey, like if you're looking at three things right now, you're new at strength. What should I start with? I would say start with the kettlebell. It's the best entry point. We find it so easy to start coaching people in powerlifting or transition to some bodyweight strength after training them with kettlebells. It's extremely easy because they get that body weight language of strength down.